Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Kneon. I am here with Geeky Sparkles.
Hello.
And we're going to talk about the comic book industry not doing very well. Image Comics said that Diamond Distribution's goal is stealing $3 million worth of comic books from them.
Wow.
$3
so that's
million.
what they have. Is that what they have in the warehouse? Or is that like total with what they owe them before they had the stuff in their warehouse?
I am pretty sure they're one of the biggest publishers. So I'm assuming they probably have like $3 million worth of inventory in the warehouse. Now, for those of you who haven't been following the situation very closely, Diamond Comic Distributors filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy back in January, and it's been a roller coaster ride. But fast forward to the last month or so, and the other shoe has dropped for a lot of these publishers. Some of them were having a hard time getting paid as it is. Now Diamond is like, oh, we're going to basically sell the inventory from the warehouses out the back door, even though it technically belongs to the publisher. And they're talking they might sell it to like an Ollie's Bargain Outlet or something like that. So now we have a whole bunch of publishers trying to stop them from doing that. And some publishers came out and said, if they do that, we might go bankrupt, because we needed not only the money from, like, Dynamite's in a really bad place right now. They're like, we can't even make payroll because they're holding their money. But this is what happens when you put all your eggs in a basket with a broken handle.
Yeah, so they're holding money on stuff that's been sold, and now they want to take beyond the money they're holding. They want to take the stuff that was on consignment that they don't own and sell it too.
Yes, and a lot of game companies are like, this is going to kill us anyway, because not only are you taking the merchandise, which they don't legally have a right to, but they claim that they do through some stupid loophole and fill out the paperwork or something. But they're also going to wind up competing with themselves. How can you sell a game for $25, $35 when they're selling it at Ollie's Bargain Outlet for $5.99?
Yeah, right. It's going to be really hard. And
it's going to be hard.
Well, Ollie's and them should refuse to buy it, and I'm hoping that if they would try to sell it to him, they will. But who knows if they will or they won't.
I don't know. So let's talk about the latest. Before we get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants. Guys, you'll get a woohoo if you do.
Woohoo!
Go out to news.clownfishtv.com, news.clownfishtv.com for more podcasts and news. Thank you for the support. Let's talk about this. This is a bullet that we dodged because we were actually talking about maybe possibly going in with Diamond a couple of times throughout the last couple of years, and it's not turning out very well for people that went all in. Now, Marvel and DC, they jumped ship a couple of years ago. Image, I think, didn't put all their eggs in their basket, but apparently they still have like $3 million worth of inventory.
What's funny to me though, because you've been telling, at least to me, for years that you thought Diamond was going to destroy the comic book industry. You've been telling me that for quite a while. And I remember when I first met you and we were talking about comic books and you were explaining to me how it works, I was like, that's not a good idea.
No, it's not.
Diamond is the only. I said, so what happens if they go out? And you're like, well, they're not. They're Diamond. I'm like, but what if they do? Because they're like, now we have other options. But at the time, most people, and the Diamond was still the number one option. And I was like, what if they go out? And you're just basically like, I don't know, that's going to suck. And then later on, after you worked, with Gemstone and other things over the course of the years, you kept saying, Diamond goes under, they're going to destroy, one way or another, they're going to destroy comics. And here we are.
Yeah. It was very obvious to anyone who's had any dealings with Diamond over the years that this was not a serious business. It was like this guy's hobby, and
it's like Jeff's piggy bank. It's what
it was his personal piggy bank. Yeah,
in my opinion.
In your opinion, but it never felt like a serious business. And we did freelance for a number of years for Gemstone. Now, to be fair, up until the very end, they paid like clockwork. Like we always got paid, and then the checks started getting later and later and later.
Yeah, we know what it's like. We've been there.
Yeah, and then eventually they just stopped coming, and then we found out, oh boy, they just stopped paying everybody, and that was
right around the time he was building his museum.
Around the time he's building his museum, and I heard through the grapevine that he was basically diverting funds from Gemstone into this museum, which turned out to be a wild goose chase anyway. So they've always been robbing Peter to pay Paul, and this has been going on for at least the last, I would say, probably since the comic book industry broke, since the big crash in the late 90s. I think they've just been kind of getting by the skin of their teeth. And then the pandemic definitely was the kill shot.
Well, they also refused to do anything. Like other
Yeah.
places popped up because of the pandemic.
Yes.
And there was a demand, and Diamond kind of like, oh, well, sucks to be you, I guess. And they kind of shot themselves in the foot.
Yeah.
They were already limping, and they just blew the whole rest of the foot off.
Just blew the rest of the foot. Just kind of like the fly with the shotgun, the Cronenberg fly. People would get that reference. Google it.
I
It's
don't
really
because
gory.
I don't want to see that.
It's
Why
really
did you have
gory
to? Okay.
stuff. Anyway, well, I guess his hands and feet got melted off.
Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Their hands and feet are melted off too.
Okay. Anyway, Image says this is coming from Bleeding Cool, and I gotta give a hat tip to Vinny who sent a couple links over. I actually haven't been keeping track of it this week. I just figure everybody's in the shit right now with the comic book industry. Image says Diamond's goal is stealing $3 million worth of comics from them. So Image has joined a number of comic book publishers in filing objections against Diamond, the debtors in the Diamond Chapter 11 bankruptcy case. They're planning to sell off consigned inventory from hundreds of comic book publishers as if it were their own. The difference between Image and other publishers is the language used. Yeah, they've been kind of like, yeah, this isn't fair or whatever, but Image, they're the third largest comic book publisher. And so they can be like, yeah, F you and the horse you rode in on. So this is the language in the legal paperwork. The filing from Image Comics states that the plan is a brazen attempt by the debtors to misappropriate Image's inventory, which Diamond Comic Distributors Inc. holds as Image's agent. For months, the debtors refused to engage in meaningful discussions with Image regarding the return of Image inventory.
Okay, that makes sense. I was wondering why they just didn't take it back. Okay.
Yeah, they wouldn't even return their calls or whatever about it. Regarding the return of Image inventory, Diamond holds or even to provide contractually required reporting of Diamond's post-petition sales of that inventory. Yeah, apparently they were still selling people's comics and sending them reports, but not actually paying them for the sales. It said the pretext that Image needed to wait and see if the contract between Image and Diamond was designated for assumption and assignment as part of the debtor's asset sale to Sparkle Pop. When Sparkle Pop did not designate the agreement without warning and without even first moving to reject the agreement, the debtors filed a motion seeking to sell Image's inventory in a fire sale auction, most likely for pennies on the dollar, and use the proceeds to pay their creditors.
Right, except for the people that they owed money to. So that's this, they're trying to pay the bank, but they're not going to pay the people. They're going to steal, basically, not pay the people they have the stuff from, the comics and merch.
Yep.
They're selling it, and they aren't paying them for the back due that they owe them. And then they're going to take what's left in the warehouse and sell that too, and not pay them. But they're going to pay the bank.
Yeah,
of course they are.
Well, the bank's probably threatening to come after Jeppy personally because they owed a bunch of money, I guess. That's what I'm talking about. Like, this company has never been, I don't believe they've ever been solvent. Maybe they were in the 80s, 90s, but for the last decade plus, I think they've just been like borrowing and robbing Peter to pay Paul. And they've had several rounds of layoffs. Even before the pandemic, they had several rounds of layoffs. I mean, it's not really a very viable business model to bet on servicing the 1,500 comic shops that are left. I think the tabletop gaming was saving them. And then they lied about that too. They lied about the tabletop games. They said they still had a deal with Wizards, and that cost them another deal because it turned out that Wizards didn't have it. They already knew that Wizards was going to work.
Wizards got their stuff back, or if it's in there too.
I don't know. I'm hearing that there could be a bunch of other tabletop stuff. It's a mess. It's a mess. So it goes on. It says, Image believes the imprecision of the debtor's assertion in the motion was meant to deliberately obfuscate the fact that a very large portion of Diamond's inventory was held as agent or consignee, even if other debtors may have purchased the majority of their inventory from vendors outright. Image intends to seek discovery from the debtors under bankruptcy rules 7026 through 7037. Image believes will conclusively establish this. The debtors cannot accomplish their goal of stealing and then selling Image's inventory through emotions. That debtors must initiate an adversary proceeding before stripping Image of its property rights.
Well, what got me too, and I've mentioned this before, was they tried to argue that the reason they're allowed to do this is because there was a form that they were supposed to fill out to get their stuff back, and they claimed that of the 128 vendors that are, have stuff with Diamond, not a single one filled out this form by the deadline, which tells me no one knew about it. because there's no way in hell that if out of 128 or whatever people or companies that were involved, that not a single one, at least one or two would have filled it out. At least even like 10% would have filled it out. You have 0, which says that there's something fishy going on here.
Deliberately obfuscated, right? Which I think they just, it was a sleight of hand. And they're pointing out that Diamond was, it goes on and on, but they said until 2023, Diamond was the exclusive distributor for Image. And then in 2024, they were the exclusive agent just for the overseas market. And then they switched to Lunar. Geez, I can't imagine why. Or Image switched to Lunar. They said when that happened, Diamond failed to transfer a large portion of their inventory without explanation. Of the total, so this is, basically Diamond had a bunch of their inventory in the warehouse. They didn't transfer it to either Image or Lunar to distribute. So they have $2.9 million worth of Image inventory left at Diamond. $1.2 million is inventory that Diamond failed to transfer to Lunar's possession per Image's direction. So I'm sure they have emails and correspondence for that. Diamond wrongfully remains in possession of that inventory despite clear petition instructions from Image. Thus, that portion of inventory Diamond now holds was never intended to be governed by the agreement, no matter what relationship it is deemed to create, and Diamond has no right to sell that portion of the inventory, even if it somehow obtains the right to sell inventory supposedly consigned to Diamond.
So basically, they were told to send that back.
To send it to Lunar.
Before any of this happened.
Yes.
So they're going to argue that because they had it in their possession, it's theirs to sell. It's like they were ordered to send it back before any of this happened, and they didn't do it. So they can't argue now that they have the right to sell it because it was never theirs to sell, because they were supposed to return it and never returned it.
And they just wouldn't do it.
I think they're going to find that this is going to happen with all these companies. The problem is, what I think they're hoping for is it gets stalled out in courts long enough, they could just, offload it, pay off the bank, and then, well, we're bankrupt now. You can't, it's dissolved. You can't do anything.
Well, yeah. So they pushed it back because they wanted to have the hearing the week of San Diego Comic-Con, and like all the publishers would have been in San Diego, and I'm sure that was intentional. Like, we're gonna have this, super secret, hearing or whatever. Right. Oh, you can't make it because you've already dumped, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars into going to San Diego Comic-Con. Oh, golly, what a pity! If only you were there to stick up for yourselves. They got the
date moved, right?
Yeah, they got moved to August. Yeah,
good. Screw them.
Yeah, so there are nine publishers in this this class action suit. It's Paizo. So that would be a tabletop company, right? And Green Ronin's another tabletop company. Let's see, they've got Drawn and Quarterly, Fantagraphics, Living the Line, I'm not familiar with that one, Zenoscope, Ablaze, Avatar, Hermes Press, American Mythology Productions, and Udon. Udon's involved. In addition to the 2 game publishers. That explains why Drawn and Quarterly and Fantagraphics, 2 of the 3 companies that put out the word last week they're organizing to fight Diamond, did not appear in the objecting group as Dynamite Entertainment. They were in a second group. So there are two groups of publishers forming class action lawsuits against Diamond.
Good. They need to, because this is bullshit. All Diamond had to do was send them their stuff back. Okay, they're going to argue we didn't have the money to pay them for what we owed them, and they could maybe get away with that temporarily. But to taking their stuff and selling it to pay back the bank,
that is some bullshit.
Yeah, and of course the banks are all for it. It's past to be their idea, because they just want to make sure that they get theirs.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that's it, right? Because they're going to tell them to do whatever they got to do. It's just like dealing with like the IRS or something. They're going to be like, they don't give a shit if your clients or your whatever, you got to lay people off, whatever. They're like, as long as we get our money, that's all we care about. I
mean, it's bad enough that you didn't pay them the money due, but then, okay, fine. That's one issue. But then to take all their stuff and say, we're going to steal that too. That's a completely separate issue. And then that's just way too far. I mean, all of it's way too far, but that's really way too far.
Again, this shouldn't shock anyone who's actually been, and look, I'm not trying to throw shade at these publishers. I'm not, but all the warning signs have been there with Diamond for at least 10 to 15 years. Like they can't pay all their bills all at once. That's not a good sign. Would you really trust your entire business model to them? And that's what a lot of these companies did. They've got some other options. They go through Amazon or whatever, but so many of these publishers, they lived and died by Diamond. So if Diamond goes belly up, you're sunk too. And they couldn't all jump to Lunar or Penguin because they weren't big enough. Mm-hmm. So what do you do?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it sucks. It sucks, but
it does suck. But I don't know what else to tell you. I mean, but those are the ones that couldn't jump because they weren't big enough, or the ones who definitely definitely, but likely will have a chance of folding. So. Yeah,
so we'll see what happens. I mean, some of these people I think will be fine, but it's just the principle of the thing too. It's like you're acting like a sleaze, but everybody knew. Everybody knew.
I mean, I don't understand why it's a surprise. I mean, I figured that out years ago. Like when I just started paying attention to this because of you being involved in comics, which got me involved in comics. I figured out Diamond was skeezy from way back.
Oh yeah.
Way back.
Yeah, I mean, whether it's intentionally being malicious or just being incompetent or whatever the deal is, it's going to bite everybody hard. Right now, the comic book industry is not in a very good state. It actually was starting to rebound last year, and then this shit happened. So it's like womp womp. Comics can't catch a break. It sucks. Going to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants. We'll talk later.
Bye.
For more pop culture news, views, and rants, go to news.clownfishtv.com. That's news.clownfishtv.com.